and they turned out not to be real. Now, what's this God stuff that people are trying to tell me? These stories and this magical guy that appeared on Earth and in this woman's womb, but it didn't occur in the regular way, and so this is sounding even more far-fetched than even the tooth fairy. At least the tooth fairy left me something behind, that I could see. A quarter. Whoa. But I started reading it, and when I came out on parole and got violated and went back to the county jail, then I was saved and felt saved and believed that I had been saved, because now I had something to hold on to, where before it was like just emptiness. And it was a different experience than the other 2 times I had been saved, and this time I just like put myself, trusted in God, trusted that what I had read about and heard about and had been seeing was true. And it's hard for me to do. That trust in something is very difficult. But I have trusted in God from that point on, and it seems to be viable. But like I said, I don't always feel that faithful. I don't always think that I'm that faithful.
Rollyn, I don't think any of us. I certainly don't always feel faithful. I mean, there are things in the way, things with my wife, how we interact. When we have disagreements,
Mm-hmm.
or necessarily how I always spend my time, when I could be more helpful to her with the baby, or just to her, or I can go on and on and on. There are areas I think that we're all always going to be growing in. That's why God gives us grace too.
Another thing that deterred me for a long time was going to different churches with my wife. We had experienced this church, and then some friends would say, well, you should try our church, and then try this church. So we tried different churches. But the thing that was like a theme between all these churches was, well, we're the best church. And they would end up, not specifically, but they would talk about other churches. And to me, that was like going against exactly what they were trying to teach. So that turned me off for a while. And then the church that we went to, where the preacher was going crazy, he had like these teenagers bring up their cassettes and records and stuff, and he had a big hammer, and he's like smashing them in front of the congregation, and this is all the devil's work, and the guy's running around the outside of the church, jumping over the pews and stuff. And
it's theater.
Woo! It's like, whoa. So, and then seeing evangelists on TV, this one guy that the black guys in prison watch all the time. And his name is T.D. Jakes, some kind of an evangelist. And I would watch that on Sundays. And what I noticed was every so many minutes, they're running the thing underneath the scroll, asking for money. This is where you send the money. The stage is lit up with T.D. Jakes, big lights, things moving around with his name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, shouldn't it say Jesus?
Yeah.
Who are we talking about here? So
Totally. That's a great point.
Well, for episode 5, guys, obviously we We talked about those difficult portions of it that will be controversial. And might I just say, if you guys have a different opinion on it or have questions, feel free to email us. That's godspropertyradio@gmail.com. With any questions, we'd be happy to try and answer those or find the answers for them if we don't know them. But as far as this episode goes, I mean, okay, we've got the Boy Scouts, we've got homosexuality, we do have sex offense, we have prison time, we have basically corporate conspiracy and state conspiracy. I mean, it kind of had everything, you know? It's like one of those epic tales.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say that personally I've gotten to know Rollyn, and I trust that his story is true. I've observed his character, and I truly do feel that he's changed. I don't think that you can narrow down any of what he's done as a psychological disorder or disease. The only disease here is sin. And I really want to get that through. I don't buy into all of this, take a medication for this and go get therapy for that. I'm not saying those things can't aid to situations, but I truly believe the only way is through Christ. And that's the only way you're going to take care of your issues. For those of you that didn't buy into what Rollyn said, I can't do anything for you. This is a man's story, and we're going off of his testimony, just like we went off Lori's testimony. We believe these people, and if you don't, that's fine. That's up to you. You have to, pray about it. I earnestly ask all of our listeners to truly pray about this episode. Consult the Spirit. A lot of times we judge people, and we assume that God is speaking to us, just judging someone right away. But often we don't pray about it. It is easy to dismiss an individual based on our own opinion and not pray about it. And all I'm saying is, please pray about it. Ask the Lord for some guidance. And if the Spirit leads you to believe that this is total malarkey, then so be it. We aren't here to make the decision for you. We're just here to offer you people's testimonies of their lives. And nonetheless, I think that a lot of us think that people who go to prison need to pay for it and continue to pay for it, and they do. But I'm of the opinion that it is so hard for them to find a job and get back into society. Sure, like you might not want to put a sex offender in charge of a daycare. Okay? Like I'm right on board with that. But to not be able to hire a sex offender at Dairy Queen, where he's on camera all day long and could be escorted to his car and signed off on, I mean, he's just serving ice cream. Heaven forbid that some kids come in. And like we heard in Rollyn's testimony, not all these cases are just kids. You don't know the person's story. You don't know what they've been through. And people can change. I've watched people change. I have friends who've been through the AA program that have totally changed their life around and never had a drop of alcohol since, or whatever drug that they were addicted to. I mean, I've watched it. So I know people can change. So why can't a sex offender change? And just please bear with that in mind.
In addition to what Sam is saying there, I kind of want to pause here for a minute with a little story. There was a man back in I believe he lived in on the quarter century of the 1700s, 1725, right about then, 1730s. And he was aggressively active in the slave trade of Great Britain. If you don't know a lot about that, let me tell you a little about what these men did. He was a slaver, and he was a captain. And not only would they trade human beings, not only would they stuff them, just incredible amounts, 3 to 5 times the amount of people that a bay could hold, just one on top of another. I mean, these African Americans, these people who they considered to be no better than animals, would pee and poop on themselves, and they wouldn't be able to move for 3 weeks. I think the percentage was like more than half of them would die on the journey. Beyond that, these men would pick the women out of their cargo, if you will, as crude as it is to call them that, because they're human beings. They would pick them out. They would string them up by their hands. The crew would rape them. This captain would rape them. And when I say them, I mean this was a common practice among slavers and their crew. Just again and again, repeatedly molesting them. I mean, there are even some records of captains that I've heard of, and I can't prove it, so maybe I shouldn't say that, but supposed homosexuality that had gone on as well of men. So, this man, he's just a horrible guy. I mean, you can't imagine the amount of atrocities. But, he wrote a song that I bet a lot of you as a Christians would know. And that song is Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. The author of that song and that slave trader captain was John Newton. He later became a pastor in his life and became part of the anti-slavery movement in Great Britain, leading to its end with William Wilberforce, who studied under him. Anyway, all that to say, if a man like John Newton can change, who now after you've heard Rollyn's testimony and what I just told you about him, clearly if you're rolling on a scale, John Newton was the worst of the two. If a man like that can change and have such a profound impact,
Again, the scale, if you're judging by the scale of our sinful nature.
Yeah, if you, as Sam said, if you're judging by that scale and you want to go that way, John Newton was clearly worse, but God forgave him, God restored him, had a rich relationship with him, and used him mightily in the history of the nation, and that really impacted the world. It killed the slave trade around the world almost overnight when it finally happened. That's another story, but anyway, to talk a little bit more about Rollyn and what we discussed, Sam had mentioned, these men, they go to prison and they pay for what they do. I want to bring up some things that I found a couple articles that we're going to post in the show notes. Sam said, these men really do pay for it. And I have relatives who have been in prison. The relative who raped me, he is now serving in prison. And they do suffer. And it is hard and it's difficult and it is dangerous, especially for sex offenders. It's really dangerous. But I kind of want to stop and take a look at the prison system and compare it to the Bible and what God's Word says. A man by the name of Reverend Stephen M. Schley, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, wrote a article called A Biblical Look at Our Prison System. We'll post this in the show notes. And he goes on through this and talks about how things worked in the Old Testament. If you stole from someone, you didn't go to prison. You repaid that person. And if you couldn't repay them what you took, you served them, okay, until you had paid off the debt that was owed to them. So this did one or two things. First of all, it stopped the nation of Israel from having to support prisoners. Our prisoners live better than our grandparents and great-grandparents do in nursing homes. They should swap care, okay? The prison would be better for your elderly grandparents, unless you can afford, the ritzy places, but
I would say with the exception of some of the really harsh things that happen in prison, because I don't think that the grandparents and great-grandparents go through some of the things that these men go through, which again, I guess is part of paying their price, unfortunately.
Right. The point I'm getting at is I believe, and I'd have to go back to this article again, but I believe the number is $45,000 a year per inmate. Okay? $45,000 a year. That is more than double what I make in a year. Okay? So why are we maintaining these large prison facilities where you're basically, what are you paying for? You don't have to work. Your meals are provided for. You have clothing. You can research and you get to watch television. All right, okay, and you have to go through therapy and all these things, and there are really horrible things that happen in prison. I mean, Rollyn told us about some of that. I don't want to downplay that. But my point is, what kind of punishment is that really? In the Bible, you killed someone, you died. Talk about a deterrent to murderers and rapists. I mean, hey, if I murder someone, I'm going to get 25 years to life, and as Rollyn told us, that's like a badge of honor in the prison system. In ancient Israel, you killed someone, you're dead. Wow, okay, so I don't want to kill someone. It's a great deterrent the way God set it up. But one quote I want to take from Stephen Schley here, Reverend Stephen Schley, is many prisoners have openly admitted that they found themselves in prison because they were sloppy in their lives of crime and had not perfected their skills. Through mutual exchange of ideas with one another in prison, where they have plenty of idle time to talk and think, they will sharpen their abilities so that they do not make the same mistakes again.
Prisons become literal training grounds for more professional criminals. These men become even more hardened and brutal in having to endure the system. Prisons do not restrain, but actually foster crime. All right, now this is his opinion and what he's gathered in his own research. But I think that would be true to a sense. You know, a lot of guys, they come right out, they hit the streets again,